Hello again from Hollywood. With us today are Faith Sullivan, an author whose latest novel is Cape Ann, which recounts a child's experience growing up in Minnesota during the Depression, and Chris Crosby, composer and singer who bears a proud family name. The beat goes on. And now, here's your man of the half hour, Skippy Lowe.
Faith Sullivan, growing up in Minnesota?
Yes.
That's a nice place, Midwest.
Yes, it is a nice place to grow up, yes.
Tell me about the book you just finished.
All right.
This is your third?
Fourth.
Fourth? Is it your fourth?
Yes, yes.
Huh.
This is my fourth novel.
It's called Cape Ann?
The Cape Ann. The Cape Ann, because the title comes from a house plan in the book called the Cape Ann. And it's a house that a mother and her little child, 6-year-old child, want to build. They want to build this house.
Yes.
And that goes through the entire novel, their desire for a home. It's set during the late Depression years in the Middle West in a very small town. It's told from the point of view of a 6-year-old girl named Lark, who is growing up Catholic.
Is that you? I got to start.
Well, part of it is certainly, yes,
Yeah.
part of it is. I think part of every novel is autobiographical, and certainly growing up during those years in that place and growing up Catholic.
But you know something? That sounds like fun, growing up in Depression at 6, 7, 8 years old in the wonderful little town of Minnesota.
Well,
It must have been fun. That's life.
There was a lot of fun, and there was also a lot of sadness as well. I mean, the Depression was not an
that's
easy
life.
time.
Sadness is everything.
Exactly.
Joy, everything.
And this child's father works for the railroad, and they live in the railway depot, which is not exactly the normal place to grow up. So trains and the hobos, the many, many men who were riding the rails during those days, looking for work, this all plays a part in her life. It's all part of her environment.
Sounds like King's Row.
It sounds, yes,
Remember
it
King's
sounds
Row
like
with
a
Ann
number of-
Sheridan?
Yes.
And matter of fact, Reagan. He did that, remember?
Yes,
Reagan?
absolutely.
Now, growing up in those days in a depot and the trains going by late at night, or a lot of trains were through?
Oh, any time of the day or night.
Really?
Freight trains went through, yes.
Used to play on the track?
Yes. Oh, yes. Walking down the track, you know.
That must have been fun.
Like a high wire walker.
I used to do that.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
I grew up in the Midwest, too, in Illinois.
Yes.
And it was fun.
Yes.
Lots of fun.
Well, yes, it was fun. I enjoyed my own growing up. As I say, growing up in the Depression, though, had its bleaker side. These people are not rich, certainly, and many, many of the people around them were people who are either very poor or totally out of work. They're on WPA or
They work the railroad.
Or some of them work for the the railroad. And this story, as I said, was told from the point of view of a 6-year-old child. She is watching her parents' marriage disintegrate during the book. This all sounds very down. It's not as down as it sounds, but there is, as you point out, in every life, there are the bleak moments and there are the bright moments, and certainly in this story it's no different. And she is trying, as children do in those circumstances, to hold the marriage together herself.
Right.
And she takes great responsibility for holding the marriage together. And when it can no longer be held together by her or anything else, she feels great guilt about that as well.
Faith Sullivan. Dan Sullivan's wife.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
A fabulous critic here in Los Angeles.
Thank
the
you.
Los Angeles Times.
Yes.
Is a fabulous critic. You've been married to how long? How long have you been married to Dan
We've
Sullivan?
been married about 25 years now.
25 years.
Yes.
How does it?
I know I don't look that old.
Tell me something, Miss Faith. How does it feel to be married to a critic that goes to the theater and, you know, tell me something.
Well,
some of your lady friends, what do you think? I mean, they disagree and sometimes.
Oh, yes, people are kind to
I like
critics' wives,
Dan. I
however.
think he's right on the button. I really do.
They find, you know, they may take exception with him and say all sorts of things to him, but by and large, I only can think of one time in all the years that we have been together when anyone complained to me about his reviews. They pretty much take him on personally if that's their problem, yeah.
Where'd you meet him?
I met him in Minneapolis. I was teaching high school and writing comedy sketches.
School teacher.
Oh, yes. Yes, and I was writing comedy sketches for a friend who had a satire group, which still exists there today. It's a good deal on the order of Second City, but it's in Minneapolis. It's called the Brave New Workshop. And Dan was writing for the Minneapolis Tribune, and he was also writing comedy sketches for this same group, and that's how he
Was
met.
he a critic then?
Yes.
He was?
Yes.
That's where he started, in Minneapolis?
Right.
I see. How many children do you have?
We have 3 children.
3?
Youngest just graduated from high school. The oldest one graduated from college a year ago. And the middle one is a boy, and he's at Santa Barbara.
Where would you like to see this novel go, Cape Ann? I mean,
well,
say,
I would
a movie? How about it?
Of course, I would like to see a movie of it. There's a wonderful, wonderful part in here for a strong female actress.
No.
The mother is a wonderful part. Just
A strong female actress.
Yes. Yes.
Let's not give Meryl Streep. She gets a lot of them. Let's save it
Well,
away.
I adore Meryl Streep, but I had in mind somebody, a Jane Alexander or Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda.
That kind
Jane Fonda.
of actress.
Yeah, Jane Fonda.
Yes. Yes.
So your children, are they in the business at all? In showbiz or writers or anything?
No. Well, they all seem to be writers. My oldest is a poet. However, she has to find a way to support her habit, as it were. So she is studying Chinese medicine, although she has a college degree. The middle child, who is a boy, is managing editor of the daily newspaper on Santa Barbara campus. So he's going in that direction.
I see.
And the youngest also looks to be a creative writer.
I see. Growing up in Minnesota.
Minnesota,
Yeah,
yes.
it's cold there, wasn't it? Was a child.
Yes, it's cold.
Think back. I mean,
yeah.
Thinking back in your childhood, wasn't it a lot of fun than thinking your child today? Wouldn't you like to have your child live those days?
Well,
Because of the crime today?
Well, yes, I do worry about that. I think everybody does who lives in a city. However, I notice that my children find all the excitement and all the wonder in life that you did in a small town in the city. I mean, maybe we were lucky. The street that we lived on here in Los Angeles was like a, very much like a Midwestern city street, and that we knew all of our neighbors.
There is a Midwestern street here in Los Angeles?
Our street.
I'd like
Third
to find
Avenue,
it.
Third Avenue.
Okay, go ahead.
We knew all the neighbors. The kids grew up with, you know, neighbor kids, and it was very much like living in a smaller community. And so really, I don't think their growing up has been that terribly different from my own. And maybe because we live in Los Angeles, we've been very strict raising our kids. Very, very strict. Much stricter than my family was with me.
What do you mean by strict? Say, like, give me an example. How strict are
when
you?
they were in high school, I was very much afraid of their being out late at night.
Drugs? You worry about drugs? And
I really didn't worry with my kids about drugs.
certain
and they
clubs they go to?
Yeah.
The people they mingle with? And all?
But mainly just the dangerous streets. I mean, crazy people who are either drunk or on drugs that are killing people in their automobiles, that kind of thing. You know, that's what I worried about.
There's a gentleman next to you, his Chris Crosby, who grew up here in Hollywood.
Yes.
Faith, you met him in the green room.
I sure
and
did.
Chris Crosby is Bob Crosby's son. Growing up as Crosby, Bing Crosby's nephew and Bob Crosby's son. Difficult or what? Tell me about it. I gotta know, Chris. You know, Crosby is a name that, am I right? Am I right?
Magic,
I mean, it
absolute
is
magic.
And he writes songs.
Yes.
Great songwriter. Tell me about it, Chris.
I think it was great. Geez, what can I tell you? All the advantages, I guess, that you have that maybe some other kids don't have. And sometimes all the disadvantages that nobody else has.
Right.
You know, I think when I was going out with girls in high school, to give an example of advantages, by the time you got them home, their mother had already prepared a room for you to spend the night. You know, she'd worked out astrology charts where you were perfect together with the girl and all those kind of things. But then, of course, what happens if you didn't like the girl, you know? So it's a double-edged sword, I think, for anybody in any life.
You write songs. You had a bunch of songs, and you just did a video on your uncle, Bing.
Right.
It's called...
It's called My Uncle Bing.
My Uncle Bing? Tell me about that.
Well, we did, so far we got 22 half-hour interviews. Bob Hope, Phil Harris, Mary Martin, Stuart Granger, Rhonda Fleming, Jane Wyman.
Great names.
Donald O'Connor, Rich Little, Anthony Quinn, the list goes on and on.
You grew up with all these people coming to your home. And
I grew up around them. Even like Maureen O'Hara, I almost drowned in Maureen O'Hara's swimming pool. My father saved us. He came running down the hill and jumped in and pulled us out. I had my 2 brothers with me. We were, geez, I guess I was
you
about...
You have 2 brothers?
2 brothers. They were about 8 or 9 or something like that, and I was about 10 or 11. And And we decided we want to go swimming first, you know. And you know, why wait for the old folks?
Right,
you know?
right.
So we went right on down the hill in Bel Air there where the swimming pool was, and we just started walking in the shallow end. We kept walking right on down in the deep end, and the water was. Last thing I remember is looking up through the water and seeing my father's body charging down the hill and flying in to pull all three of us out.
How's your dad doing? He's living in San Diego now, Bob Crosby?
He's doing fantastic.
Is he?
He's happy. He's still working. I just worked with him out at Disneyland.
You did?
Yeah, we had a great time. And
singing with his band?
Singing with his band, which is a great thrill, you know. They're all the best players in the world. We just finished a video on him, 50 Years of Jazz, Bob Crosby and the Bobcats.
Right.
All of the stars of all that era, the jazz era, that Dixieland,
what's happening?
Good, happy
Faith,
music.
what's happening with those days? I mean, you know, you...
Well, I don't know, but I can hardly wait to hear this. It sounds wonderful.
I mean, you and your husband must have danced to Bing Crosby's music and Bob Crosby's. I mean,
yes,
many.
we did. We
Am
did.
I right?
And I love it. And I think that I don't think anything particular has happened to it. It's still there. It's just another layer of music that we have available to us. I think it's wonderful that we have all of these things concurrently. Really.
What do you remember about Bing as growing up? What's stuck in your mind? Chris Crosby, what really stuck in your mind about Bing Crosby that you could share with us today? That really is stuck in your mind?
Well, I think, you know, no matter, it has to stick in your mind, even if you weren't related to him. The guy was a legend, you know.
True.
I mean, there's never been anything else like him before or since.
Right.
He won Oscars, he won gold records, he appeared in films and on recordings and television. He transcended all the different mediums. It was interesting to you know, watch what happened when he would walk into a room or something like that.
What happens?
And you know, well, you'd see time stop, you know, and for good reason, because the whole look was focused over here where he was, because you knew something was going to happen. You didn't want to miss it or something. I mean, that's the way it is with a legend, isn't it? I mean, if Billy the Kid walked into a bar and you're in there having a drink, you pay attention.
Faith, are you listening to his voice, his speaking voice? Listen to that speaking voice. Isn't that? Yeah, he's got a real deep voice like his uncle and his father. And do you know, he's a great singer. I would love to hear.
Are we going to hear him?
Are we? Oh, I'd love to hear it.
See, that'd be
I'm
great.
going to press this magic button, and would you sing the song that you wrote for us? That, what is it called?
Primitive Love.
Primitive
Love.
Love.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
just wrote
number
this
2,
for
and I just take that button off, and I'd love to hear it. Your mic. No, the mic. Give it to him. Hold it.
I can't say I'm feeling in the air. Close my eyes and know you're there. In a world that has no face, what you've got they can't replace. Primitive love. Let's get back to primitive love. Give me more, I can't get enough. Primitive love, primitive love. Night winds howl in the pale moonlight. Feel so wild, feel alright. The river is deep and the way is wide. Come with me to the other side. Primitive love, let's get back to primitive love. Give me more, I can't get enough. Primitive love, primitive love. Eyes that bond each time we come, open wide until it's done. Soul to soul as we embrace. Take me to that hidden space. Primitive love, let's get back to primitive love.
can't sense a feeling in the air. Close my eyes and know you're there. In a world that has no face, what you've got they can't replace. Primitive love, let's get back to primitive love. Give me more, I can't get enough. Primitive love, primitive love.
Oh, I love that, Chris. I love that. Primitive.
Yeah, thank you.
Written, you wrote that for David Bowie, is that it?
Yeah, isn't that great?
David Bowie's in town, I understand.
Yeah.
And you are going to present this to David Bowie to do?
Absolutely.
Why didn't you do it yourself? Why David Bowie? Come on, Chris.
I'd
It's a great
love to
song.
have David Bowie do any song I've ever written. Are you kidding?
Okay, but that's a
Oh,
great
it'd be
song.
great.
How long does it take Chris Crosby to write a song? Come on, you've got so many. Faith, he
I,
writes a song like,
When I write, I don't really work at it. I just wait until the moment comes along, and then I just blip. It's out, and it's gone. Maybe 3-4 minutes,
come
and
on,
it's all finished.
girl in your life, fall in love, fall out. Does that
Oh,
happen?
Sure, all the time. That's what inspires you to write songs.
that-
You know,
yeah.
there's a beautiful woman behind this song.
Is
you
it?
can believe it.
I knew that,
Sounds like
Faith.
it.
Primitive love.
You growing up as a child back in that wonderful place and those wonderful parades. 250,000 people. That's a small little town, isn't it? Sometime, or is that where you?
2,500 people.
Yeah,
Yes,
200, yeah, right.
yes,
That's a small town.
It's a very small town. It's a very intimate situation.
Is it really? Everybody knows everybody's business?
Oh, yes, pretty much.
Tell me about that.
Well,
Growing up,
that's
like-
very nice because it's like being part of a very large family. And on the other hand, it has all those disadvantages of having a large family around you, interference with your life, and a lot of advice that you could deal without. And, you know, so again, it's something that has both sides, ups and downs.
Memorial parades. And the whole town is there.
Memorial Day parades and the Knights of Columbus picnic and you know,
Elks, the Elks
the
and all.
Elks, absolutely. And that's
Do you ever
all
get
part
that
of it.
feeling to grow up in a small town as a child? Wouldn't you like that?
I think I'd love it. You know,
a lot of people miss that. Don't you think so, Faith? They would miss.
Well, yes. I'm really very philosophical about it, however. I think there's something wonderful about growing up wherever you grow up, as long as you have a roof over your head and food enough to eat, you know,
You're worried
you find
about that.
something wonderful wherever you are. And I'm sure that you found
So you're
wonderful
getting back to the
things about
Depression
growing up in
days,
the city.
I
Faith,
think kids
see?
just
Yes.
have to do that, don't
Absolutely.
Has
It's magic.
Depression days affected Faith Sullivan?
Oh,
Come
yeah.
on. It has, hasn't
oh,
it?
sure.
Because
Anybody
you
that grows up in a depression period is always looking over their shoulder, I suppose, in some senses. Ever since my children were very small, I have said to them, now you mark my words, we're going to have a depression next year. And they're still waiting, thank God. But you always do look over your shoulder if when you were a child things were very, very slim and skimpy, and you had to worry about money a lot.
Does your husband go to the lot of theaters every night, or
Well,
just
he
tell me
goes to about 4 shows a week.
4 shows
I
a
would
week?
say
Do you go
so,
with him?
Yes. I don't go very often. I'll tell you why. Not because I love the theater, but I get up at 5 in the morning to write. And by 8 o'clock, my head is really nodding. And I have tried to go with him under those circumstances and embarrass both of us by falling sound asleep in my seat. And if it's a steeply raked theater, you know, I
Yes.
fear for my life if I'm going to fall out of my chair.
Dan Sullivan, when he goes to the theater, he wants to sit there and be entertained.
Sure.
Or does he go as a critic? Some critics go as a critic, like, oh, I can't wait to write about it.
Oh, no, I don't think
He doesn't do
so.
this, does he?
No,
Tell me.
I have a feeling about him that he goes to see the show and comes home and writes as though he were telling a friend of his whether or not he should see the show.
Good.
And I kind of think that's a wise policy.
He goes 4 times a week.
I would say yes, because he doesn't always review. He doesn't always review 4 times a week, but he likes to catch up on shows that somebody else has reviewed.
I see.
So that he has a big picture of what's going on.
Does he like musicals or
He likes every kind of theater as
Does he
well
really?
as long as it's
what
well
made
done.
him get into the theater as a critic? Faye, did he ever tell you?
Well, Number one, he just loves theater, and but I think it's very often fluky how people in journalism end up with the jobs that they have. They very often are assigned it by the management. If the theater critic leaves, they may grab you off the police desk or wherever you happen to be and say, you know, I'd like you to take this beat. And in a way, that sort of happened to him back in Minneapolis. He wasn't on a police beat, but he certainly was on another beat, and was commandeered or asked at least would he like to do this. And because he loved theater so much and had a long, lifelong passion for it, he said, sure, I'd love it.
Did you have fun teaching when you were young as a teacher?
I did.
Did you really?
Yeah, I don't think I was a very good teacher, but I had a lot of fun doing
What were you teaching? What were you teaching?
I taught history and English. Yes.
Did you like your teacher? Oh, you went to Catholic school. Like
I
we all
liked
went.
some of my
you
teachers.
Went to a nun.
I hated some of the other
nuns.
teachers.
Nuns? You had
I
priests,
probably
the
liked the ones that let me get away with things, and I probably disliked the ones that caught me.
Catholic schools. Which ones did you go to here?
Well, I went to Loyola High School.
I figure.
Spent most of my time at Marymount High School, and then in the confessional after that.
How was it going to school as Crosby's? Bob Crosby. The kids hated it or liked it, or you know, they say, "Hey, there's come on."
You know, some people jealous of you, and other people wanted to be your friends.
I see.
I guess it made it a little more difficult to see who the real things and the real values sometimes. You know, because it clouds things.
Did your father and Bing get along famously? I mean, famously as brothers.
Well, as brothers, of course. They didn't work together that much. My father did some records with him where Bing sang and the Bobcats played.
Right.
Big hit records. Of course they got along, like any family would get along, any brothers.
The Crosbys were very tight. Christmas?
It was a very tight
family.
family.
Christmas,
Larry
Thanksgiving?
Crosby, Bing's brother Larry, and Bob's brother Larry ran the publicity, and then Ted stayed in Washington. Everett was the manager, the business manager, and of course...
Chris, I got to ask you. Gary wrote a book about his father. Tell me, what do you think? I mean, what does he mean? I don't know. He's straightened his whole life. He's doing fine. I think Gary's doing absolutely fine.
Yeah, he is.
What does he bitter? A little bitter. Tell me, why?
Well, you have to read that book. You know, it's Gary's perspective on what it's like to be Bing Crosby's son.
Right.
The story that I'm trying to do is Bing was my uncle and godfather, and I'm in a kind of a search to find out who Bing was.
Yep.
And
who was Bing? He was a great man,
He was a great man. He was a legend. He was an enigma. Everybody that I've interviewed, all 22 different interviews, everybody had a different concept of who Bing Crosby really was.
Yes, yes.
A very simple man, but at the same time very complex. A man who made millions, billions, whatever. Invented videotape.
Was he close with his sons, though? Those 4 sons, was he close?
I think he tried to do the best job he could with his sons.
Because he was so busy.
Now, you know, when Bing grew up, when my father grew up, we're talking 1900s.
Right.
It was not unheard of, and I'm sure if you saw the Young Rascals or what is it, Little Rascals?
Of course.
You know, it was not unheard of to get a little razor strap right across the rear end, you know, or something like that.
And now
they were
it is
raised strict.
Yeah.
It was their mother was Irish, you know, and boy, you know, they got out of line, they got a whack, you know.
If a father hits a child today, they go to jail.
So when Bing started raising his first family, and I think my father the same thing. Lord knows, I saw the razor strap a few times, and I deserved it.
Deserved it, right.
You know, and I don't think I'd do that with my own kids, you know, but at that time, I think they were functioning from whatever information they had. This is the way you raise a child. You keep them in line. You put them over here, you know, and this and that, you know.
So what does...
And so maybe as Bing became this big superstar, and all the kids are talking to the other kids, and you're some kind of big deal in school because you're so-and-so's son, whatever so-and-so does becomes a real heavy number on you, you know. There can be a big feeling of rejection or hurt. But I think everybody did whatever they did for the best motivations.
I understand.
You know.
Faith?
Yes.
He had an incident on Hollywood Bowl, the Hollywood Bowl. I'd love you to tell that story. Last time I had you on the show, you said something about, that was very, very funny. His first time on, what happened? Tell me.
Well, you know, You
At the
start
Hollywood
off
Bowl.
as son of somebody or daughter of somebody, and of course the doors are kind of open to you a little faster than someone
Right.
else. But
Is that
when you
time-
have to do your first appearance at some place like the Hollywood Bowl, and there's like 20,000 kids screaming, and you don't even have a record out yet, you know, that's your beginning thing. I mean, you can imagine what stage fright is like in
True.
a small little club or somewhere where you can hide out. But at the Hollywood Bowl with all those kids, well, it was pretty terrifying, and I was scared to death. And
Someone
came
shoved you out there?
Came showtime. They had to shove me out the door to get me on the stage, and it was like a prison break up against the wall, you know, with the light shining on you, you know. And my mind went blank. I had an up-tempo song to do, the first song, and I sang the ballad instead. It was a wrong song in a wrong key, and the song finished before I finished singing. It didn't matter. The kids kept right on screaming, and then the ballad started, and I sang the up-tempo song, you know. And you know, all this time I'm like, my body's in spasms, and the more spasms it gets, the more the kids scream, and they're screaming so loud they can't hear anything. And I went off the stage. I thought it was great. You know?
Chris, what's happening with Chris Crosby 5 years down the road? What's happening? What's going to happen?
Boy,
what do you
I
see
hope
yourself?
I just keep continuing to create. I'm having so much fun. I'm writing music. I'm getting into films now. I'm writing scripts for films. And I still like to do a lot of sculpting and things like that. You know, I just,
So you keep
anything
yourself-
creative, and I just hope it just keeps going on. I hope I keep lucky enough to be able to do it.
You're single now?
Yeah.
Any girl in your life?
Oh, there's a few girls in my life.
You have daughters, don't you?
Yes.
Yes? How many do you have? Do you have
I have 2 daughters.
2 daughters. Single?
Yes.
Are they
Yes.
single?
Yes.
What's happening with Dan Sullivan? Is he happy where he's at the
Oh, I think he
Los
is.
Angeles Times?
I
What
think he's-
does he want anything else better than...
I think he's supremely happy there. He's writing a biography at the moment
He is.
of playwright William Inge.
Uh-huh.
And I think that he will continue. He's enjoying it so much. I think this is something that's going to continue after his retirement, eventual retirement.
Right.
That he'll keep on doing that sort of thing.
I'd love to have you back again
I'd
with
love to
Dan
come
on the
back.
show, and I think you're just a charming lady. I really do. And
Thank you.
I think
Thank
you're
you.
absolutely lovely, and I want to say thank you very, very much for coming on my show today.
My
because
pleasure.
You're very charming. Chris Crosby, I must tell you, your other brother is what? Your
My brother Robert.
Robert.
Robert,
What's
he's-
happening with him?
He's a sound man. He does films. He's
He
worked
does?
on tons of major movies with major stars. He's the sound man. My
Now,
other
who's
brother
Denise Crosby?
Stephen
Who's
runs,
Denise?
runs the
Where does
business.
she come from?
Denise is Dennis's daughter.
Dennis's daughters.
That's,
God, there's so many
One of
Crosbys.
Bing's kids. There are a lot of
All
us, aren't
Crosby.
there?
They're all in the...
Hello from Hollywood. Our guest today is proof positive good things do come in small packages. Short in stature, she's long on talent. As a homemaker, her favorite margarine is probably Blue Bonet. As an entertainer, she's the Pia with pizzazz. Who other than Pia Zadora? And now, lending his own style to the proceedings, here's your host and man of the half hour, Skippy Lowe.
Well, Pia Zadora, tell me. New mistress of the Pickford house. The mistress, the new one.
I'm glad you said of the Pickford house.
I was waiting for that. Tell me about that.